the entire Apple versus Epic Games dilemma could basically at this point be an entire Lord of the Rings style book. I mean, there has been so much that has happened with it, it's honestly insane. Basically, in a nutshell, it all started back in August of 2020. Essentially, Epic challenged Apple in court by saying that Apple basically takes way too much of a revenue cut from in-app purchases in the iOS App Store. So basically, with Fortnite being on the App Store, if people wanted to make in-app purchases on Fortnite, Epic would have to give Apple basically a huge cut of the revenue. So really, there has been this whole back and forth thing with Epic and Apple, really for years now, and it's even more confusing to wrap your head around when you realize that there's kind of different court cases based on where you're talking about in the world. So there is this whole Epic versus Apple court case in the United States of America, but separately, and kind of what this big story that broke today is all about, there's another whole dilemma going on in the European Union. See, back in 2022, the EU passed a law basically reducing Apple's dominance in the app economy. And so basically, as a result of this law passing, Epic Games was going to introduce a rival app store for game developers that could be used and operated on the iOS. But just before the law's enactment this week, Apple completely blocked the Epic Games store in the European Union to have access to iPhone software tools, which essentially completely prevents the game developers from establishing the Epic Games store on iOS devices. It's very confusing and very odd because, like, literally just last month, Epic announced that they had paved a way for Fortnite to basically make a comeback on iOS devices in the EU. And this was basically, the lead up to, like I said, what was going to be the result of this DMA, this Digital Markets Act that the European Union passed. It looked like all was fine and dandy, but now Apple just completely destroyed Epic's hopes of getting back on the iOS. It is very odd because, this seems like a direct violation of that DMA, but Apple is justifying this by basically pointing out Epic's alleged historical non-compliance with their rules. It's just completely going against the DMA, the Digital Markets Act, which I believe was actually supposed to go into effect literally tomorrow, Thursday. The DMA in and of itself is basically to promote competition, to prevent Apple from having a sort of monopoly on these apps. Basically making it so that, hey, there can be more than just the Apple App Store, the iOS App Store on iOS devices. Allowing the Epic Games Store on iOS devices, that would obviously create competition. So yeah, it seems like Apple is, for one reason or another, completely going against this mandate. It is a hot mess right now because basically right now you have Apple pointing the finger at Epic saying you are not following our rules, and now Epic is pointing the finger at Apple saying you are not following the law, or at least this Digital Markets Act. I don't really know where they go from here. I don't know if it's just going to be at a stalemate now for some months, but obviously this is very significant for iOS device owners who, wanted to play Fortnite or really anything on the Epic Games Store on their devices. It'll be very interesting to see if Apple, gets sued or gets some sort of punishment for, directly defying this Digital Markets Act. Many have pointed out this will no doubt lead to, at the very least, a formal investigation by the European Union. And I'm seeing this is risking Apple to pay fines up to 10% of its global annual revenue if they are found in violation. At the end of the day, this is really about Apple trying to have as much control as they can over apps on their iOS devices. Whether you see that as fair or not fair is really up to you, but now the question is definitely, where is this going to go from here? And is Apple now looking at some sort of fine, some sort of punishment by the European Union?